right beside you during this interview was Trayvon Martin's mother, Sabrina Fulton, correct?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Martin was also there, but not in the room, correct?
No, sir. He left before I even stepped inside the living room.
He left the living room, in other words.
Yes, sir.
You don't know that he left the residence, though, do you?
No, sir.
He may have still been there, but just not in the room with you.
Yes, sir.
Also in the room was one or more Martin family attorneys, correct?
Yes, sir.
Who were they?
I don't know their names, sir.
Do you know Natalie Jackson?
Yes, sir.
Was she there?
On top of the stairs, sir.
I'm sorry?
On top of the stairs.
So you knew she was there and present, correct?
Yes, sir.
Was Mr. Crump present?
No, he left before I even stepped inside the house.
But you saw him that night.
Not that night, that afternoon.
When you say that afternoon, tell me about that. I'm sorry, maybe I misspoke. The interview itself took place in the early evening, didn't it?
Yes, sir.
So you met with Mr. Crump earlier that day?
No, sir.
Tell me then what you mean, that you saw him.
When he went to, when the detective and Miss Sabrina and
I'm sorry, when the detective and
Miss Sabrina and Crump, he had joined in,
he had,
came with them to have pick me up from my friend's residence so I could go back there to have an interview with the state. That's when I met Crump. That's my first time meeting Crump.
The other time it was only on the phone when you talked with him.
When the interview, yes.
And this day on April 2nd, 2012, you met him because he was one of the people that went to your friend's house to pick you up?
Yes.
To bring you to Miss Fulton's house, correct?
Yes.
This interview actually took place at Sabrina Fulton's home in her living room, correct?
Yes, sir.
So Mr. Crump came to your friend's home to pick you up along with whom?
I was outside already. I
Okay.
met him.
But of your friend's house?
Yes.
So
sir.
Mr. Crump came to get you, correct?
Not come to get me. He was in another car. And I was in,
Two cars came to
with
get you.
detectives and stuff.
So that afternoon, Mr. Crump was in one of the cars that was dispatched to go pick you up.
Yes, sir.
And you were in the front yard of your friend's house.
Yes, sir.
And law enforcement also was involved in picking you up?
Yes, sir.
You don't know why then law enforcement would permit Mr. Crump to come with them?
I don't know,
Objection,
sir.
argumentative beyond the witness's knowledge.
Sustained. It's beyond her knowledge.
I'm asking whether she knew or not, and she said no. If the court would give me a little leeway on this.
Ask your next question.
Do you know why law enforcement allowed Mr. Crump to come with them to pick you up?
No, sir.
Who else was there? Was Ms. Fulton with them?
Yes, sir.
Do you know why law enforcement allowed Ms. Fulton to be there?
Cause she's the only person who knew where my friend lived at. She lived by my friend area.
Ms. Fulton lives near where your friend lives?
Yes, sir.
But law enforcement had your phone number. They could have just called and asked you where you were, correct?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Crump had your phone number. He could have called and asked where you were.
On it.
Pardon me?
I don't know if Crump had my number.
I don't know.
I do not know if Crump had my number.
In the interview he took of you on March 19th, didn't he say, "We're having trouble with this phone, let me call you back,"
Okay, he had my number then.
from a 904 number? And he called you back on your phone.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Gentile, I'm not saying you did anything wrong, so please don't take it that way. I'm trying to understand the dynamics of this, though.
I know I did not nothing wrong, so.
I'm sorry.
I know, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. If I'm harsh in my tone, it's not because I'm suggesting you did anything wrong here. But I'm trying to understand what the overall context of this first law enforcement interview was. So the people that came to pick you up included law enforcement, but it also included Ben Crump and Sabrina.
Again, he's repeating the answer that the witness already gave.
Can we approach the
Ask
bench,
her the
please, Judge?
question. Just ask her the question, who was there?
I'd like permission to ask leading questions of this witness on cross-examination, one step at a time.
And I'm asking that you do it one step at a time.
My question is this, just to be clear as to who was present. Law enforcement, FDLE agents were present.
Yes.
Ben Crump was present. Sabrina Fulton was present in these two vehicles that came to pick you up on the afternoon of April 2nd, 2012.
Yes, sir.
And was Mr. Delarianda present?
I don't remember him. I was in the back of the car.
Do you know of anybody else being present?
I do remember a tall dude,
I do remember.
a tall person.
Did you ever see him again later that evening?
Yes, sir.
Was he in the room?
Yes, sir.
You don't recall his name, though.
TC?
TC. Do you know that person to be an investigator with Mr. Delarianda's office?
Yes, sir.
Was there anybody else?
In the car?
Either of the cars?
I don't know who was in the other car, but I did know who was in the car. It was.
I can't hear you, ma'am.
Could you speak a little louder?
I do not know who was in the other car, but I do know who was in the car I was in.
Let's start there then. Who was in the car with you?
TC, and I think he was in the car. I think he was in the car.
Mr. Delarianda?
Yeah, I did see a ball dude, no offense. And,
Okay, we have a juror who didn't hear the answer. Could you please speak up? If you could face the microphone a little bit better.
TC,
That's the wrong microphone.
Speak to her. That's what they told me.
Yes, try that. They're supposed to put it in.
TC, the front of the car was TC, bald-headed dude.
This
Yeah.
guy?
Yeah. Sorry, man. I didn't know you. And Sabrina and me.
And you went from your friend's house to Miss Fulton's house.
Yes, sir.
And the people that you've already identified so far were in the room with you when the interview took place?
Yes, sir.
Anybody else? Any other family members?
No, sir.
Any other lawyers?
Another lawyer from the Martin family.
Right. Remember kind
big
of a big guy?
A big guy, yes, sir.
Do you know his name?
No, sir.
Would you know it if I said it?
No, sir.
No. So when the interview began in Miss Fulton's living room, you were seated next to Miss Fulton, and were the other people that you've identified other than Tracy Martin in the room then, or close by?
Yes, sir. Was in the living room.
I take it you knew that Miss Fulton would be hearing exactly what you said because you were sitting next to her.
Yes, sir.
And you certainly didn't want to say anything that you thought would hurt her feelings or make her grief even worse.
Yes, sir.
So because of that, you were very sensitive to Miss Fulton's feelings when you answered Mr. Delarianda's questions.
Yes, sir.
And that is why, for example, that you cleaned up some of the language that Trayvon Martin used.
Yes, sir.
You wanted to be helpful because you wanted to help the prosecutor arrest George Zimmerman.
I never thought I was a witness, a serious witness around that time.
At that point, being interviewed by law enforcement under oath, you still hadn't concluded that you would be a witness in the case?
Not an important witness.
Not an important witness. Because of that, did that also shape some of the things you said and why you said them?
Yes,
So,
sir.
yes?
Yes, sir.
For other reasons, you didn't want to hurt Ms. Fulton's feelings, and that you really didn't think you were going to be an important witness in the case.
No, sir.
Is that why when Mr. De La Rionda wanted to know what Trayvon Martin said, you said, "This man's watching me," rather than what he actually said?
Yes, sir.
You thought that would be offensive to Ms. Fulton and to the other people in the room?
Yes, Mr. Fulton.
Just Ms. Fulton?
Yes, sir.
So when you answered the questions that Mr. De La Rionda asked you about what was said by whom, you were concerned about how Ms. Fulton would feel or react if you actually spoke the accurate words or the accurate truth.
Objection, the compound question is complicated.
Did you understand? I'm sorry. Did you understand my question?
the
Yes,
question?
sir. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, could you answer it?
No, sir.
Let me see if I can say it better then. When Mr. De La Rionda was asking questions about what happened and who said what, you were making it sound different than it actually was, to keep from hurting Ms. Fulton's feelings.
Not all of them, sir.
I'm sorry.
Not all of them, sir.
Not all of the answers, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
But some of the answers.
Yes, sir.
Some of the answers about language, for example.
Yes, that's the only.
Yes.
That's the only thing that I changed around. Yes, I did not
That's the only
say
thing that I changed around.
that. I did not say.
So the only thing that you didn't say that was accurate was the language that Trayvon Martin used?
Yes, sir. I didn't think it was that important. He did not ask me what was Trayvon. He did not ask me if Trayvon was describing the man. He just told me I didn't think it was that important at all. He had asked me, well, how Trayvon think the man looked. I said creepy. The only thing I said was creepy. I'm not going to say it in front of the whole world, in front of people.
You were going to say what Trayvon Martin actually said in front of his mother.
Yeah, that's disrespectful.
Of course, of course. No one's arguing with you about that. But that's the decision that you made, was basically to clean it up.
Yes, sir.
You knew she was grieving. She had just lost a son. You were very sensitive to that, correct?
Yes, sir.
In fact, as you were explaining what happened and answering Mr. De La Rionda's questions with Ms. Fulton sitting there right beside you, she was crying, wasn't she?
She was not crying, just tearing a little up about when I started telling what happened that night
Again, it's so hard to hear, but did you say that she wasn't crying, but she was tearing up?
Yeah, just tearing up.
Tears coming out of her eyes.
Yeah,
Do you associate that with pain and grief and suffering?
of course.
You also, though, told Mr. Della Rianda under oath that you'd gone to the hospital. Correct?
He had asked me, did I go to the hospital? I said, yeah.
So I know that you had said that earlier to Mr. Crump and to Ms. Fulton to give a plausible explanation to them for why you didn't go to the memorial service or the wake. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And then when Mr. Della Rianda asked you about it again, you gave the same answer.
Yes, sir.
But you knew that was a lie.
Yes, sir.
Again, you lied because you wanted to give a plausible answer to Ms. Fulton as to why you didn't go to the wake.
Yes, sir.
But on the April 2nd interview, you were in fact under oath.
Yes, sir.
And you knew that.
Yes, sir.
And you made a decision then, because of how difficult the situation you had just been put in, you decided to lie about going to the hospital rather than say something that might be painful.
Yes, sir.
In the interview, in the first conversation with Ms. Fulton on March 19th and in the letter on March 19th, at no time did you mention that you heard Trayvon Martin say a little get off, correct?
Yes, sir.
Is that yes? You did not say that?
Yes, sir. Repeat your question again.
In the meeting you had, the conversation you had with Ms. Fulton on March 19th, before you did the interview later, and in the written statement that you and Ms. Cerv prepared for Ms. Fulton, the personal statement, in neither of those instances did you say that you heard Trayvon Martin say, as you said later, a little get off, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that's because you didn't think that was important at that point?
Because Carl and Miss Fulton did not ask me. Carl and Miss Fulton did not ask me about when the fight started in the grass. They did not ask me about that. He asked me about that.
So when you decided what part of what you knew to tell Ms. Fulton, you decided not to tell her that part.
She didn't ask me.
Well, I'm not sure that that was her answer, so you need to re-ask the question. I believe she said they never asked her that.
All right, now I'm asking about this witness's thinking. So when you decided what part of the information that you had about the events on the evening of February 26th, you decided in what to tell Ms. Fulton, not to tell her that you'd heard a little get off from Trayvon Martin.
Objection. Compound, question, argumentative, and mischaracterizing what this witness has previously said.
Okay, as far as compound, do you understand the question?
No, ma'am.
Pardon?
No, ma'am.
Okay, you need to break it down then. She says she doesn't understand.
Okay. On March 19th,
Yes, sir.
you had a meeting with Ms. Fulton
Yes, sir.
out in front of her home.
Yes, sir.
You had already written the letter with Ms. Serve to give to her.
Yes, sir.
When you wrote the letter about what happened on the evening of February 26th and decided what to put in it, you made the decision not to include that you heard Trayvon Martin say a little "get off, get off."
Yes, sir.
And then when you went to Ms. Fulton's house to talk with her, and she was so anxious to know what happened,
I did not go inside her house, sir.
I know that, you're out front.
Yes, sir.
When you went to Ms. Fulton's house with the letter in hand to talk with her, and she so desperately wanted to know what had happened, you, among the things that you chose to tell her, decided not to tell her that you'd heard her son say a little get off on the phone.
Yes, sir.
And you're saying that's because she didn't specifically ask you?
No, sir.
Could you explain your thinking?
I didn't want to be there, sir.
Of all the things that you decided were important to tell her, to write in the letter and to...
She did not ask me for examples.
She did not ask me.
Ask me for examples,
She did
definition.
not ask me for
No
examples.
examples, reason, none of that. The state asked me that. Court did not ask me that either. So, no, sir.
Well, how would they know to ask you if you didn't tell them what you knew?
Objection. Now, he's wanting the witness now to get in my mind as to why I asked something or not.
Okay, to the extent of her explaining why or why not the state did something, I'm going to sustain.
Whether or not someone specifically asked you, you made the decision not to volunteer that information.
I didn't think it was important. I wasn't being asked about the situation. I did not think it was important, so I was not being asked for that that part, so it didn't matter. He had asked me that. The state had asked me that.
All right, we'll talk about that in a little more detail in a minute, but let's progress now to the interview that you gave to Mr. Crump on the phone on March 19th, later the same day. You acknowledge that nowhere in that, what was it, about 30 minutes altogether?
You asked me?
The interview.
I don't remember.
But nowhere during that interview did you say, in response to any question, specific or general, that you'd heard Trayvon Martin say a little get off, get off.
He did not ask me when the fight happened. I had told him the phone had just shut off. He didn't ask me, did you hear when there was fighting going on? Did you hear something was going on between the fight? No, he did not ask me that. The state asked me that, sir.
Well, what you told Mr. Crump was that you heard Trayvon Martin say, "Why you following me?" And then you heard Mr. Zimmerman say either, "What are you talking about?" or "What are you doing around here?" And then you heard something that you described as sort of a bump, and that the phone cut off.
I had told him the bump, it gotta be his headset. His headset is always on his left ear. And he's a speaker.
Yes, and what you said to Mr. Crump was, at that point, the phone cut off.
Yes, I kept it simple and quick.
Right, so once the phone cuts off,
I had to call back.
there's nothing else that you have to say, correct? Because once the phone cuts off, you certainly can't hear anything else that might have been said because the phone had been disconnected.
Yes, sir.
So you told Mr. Crump that the phone cut off.
Yes, sir.
So, if you say at the point where there was this exchange, the conversation, the exchange, and the bump, and the phone cut off, doesn't that leave the impression that there was nothing else you could hear after that?
Yes, sir.
And you didn't at that point say, oh, by the way, no, I heard more after that, actually.
They asked me more, sir. The state had asked me more, sir.
Well, are you saying then that when you told Mr. Crump that after you heard the bump and the phone cut off, that you decided not to tell him that after the bump, but before the phone cut off, you heard Trayvon Martin say a little get off, get off?
That's a compound question.
Do you understand the question?
Yes, ma'am.
You may answer.
Like I told you from the beginning, that interview, I think it lasted like 13 minutes, I don't know, but it didn't last for that long. So I had to rush on it because I really did not want to be on the phone, sir. So I did not take my time, and just like I took my time. I had more time when I was talking to the state. With Crump, no. So the question is no.
So of all of the things that you thought might be important for them to know about what you knew,
I had told
you decided not to say that before the phone shut off, you heard Trayvon Martin say a little get off, get off.
Objection asked and answered.
Okay, let's have it answered one more time and then move on.
May we approach the bench, please?
No, she can answer the question. Go ahead and answer.
yes, sir.
So you made the decision then not to tell Mr. Crump that you'd actually heard Trayvon Martin say, get off, because you were in a hurry?
Objection asked and answered.
The word in a hurry is an additional part to that question, so I will allow it. You may answer.
Yes, sir. Because Crump is not law enforcement.
So you weren't worried about telling him, first of all, the truth
He's
or
not.
the whole story?
First of all, Crump is not law enforcement. He's not an officer. I knew that he was not an officer. So, like I told the mother from the beginning, if officer wants to talk to me, know the exact story, everything about what happened that night, they will reach me at my number. You got it?
If I got it, what I heard you to say is that you told Ms. Fulton that if they wanted to hear everything, that an officer, that you would tell everything to an officer.
Yes, sir.
But they didn't put an officer in contact with
I
you.
don't know about that, sir.
Well, you know you didn't get any messages or get any calls from an officer.
Objection has been asked and answered.
Overruled.
No, sir.
So when you were then talking with Mr. Crump in this recorded interview, for the first time ever being asked to tell the story about what you knew, you were in a hurry, and among the things that you chose not to say was that before the phone cut off, but after the bump, you heard Trayvon Martin say a little get off, get off.
Objection asked and answered.
This will be the last time the question will be asked and answered. You may answer.
Yes, sir.
So let's move then to the April 2nd interview, where you did have a chance to tell Mr. De La Rionda everything.
Yes, sir.
And that was your purpose?
Yes, sir.
This was the interview by law enforcement that you'd been waiting for,
Yes, sir.
that you knew was coming,
Yes, sir.
and that you were ready to tell everything just like it was,
Yes, sir.
even if that was different than what you'd said before.
I never thought the interview would be in the mother house with the mother. No.
I never thought the interview would be at the mother's house with the mother. No. Is that what you said?
Yes, ma'am.
Have you had a chance to read the transcript of your interview with Mr. Della Rionda on April 2nd, 2012?
Not all of it.
When's the last time you had a chance to look at it?
Two weeks ago.
Pardon me?
2 weeks ago.
When and where did that happen?
FDLE.
I can't hear you. Can you speak up just
I
enough?
said FDLE.
The Florida Department of Law Enforcement.
Yes, sir.
2 weeks ago at the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, you had a chance to review the transcript of the interview you gave with Mr. Della Rionda.
No, listen to it. I had a chance to listen to it.
Oh, so you had a chance to listen to the recording.
Yes, sir.
This was at the FDLE in Miami?
Yes, sir.
And who was present, if anyone, from the State Attorney's Office?
No, sir. 2 detectives. 2 FDLE detectives.
Do you remember the date that this took place?
No, sir.
A couple of weeks ago, though, you went to FDLE in Miami, and they gave you a chance to review the statement?
Yes, sir.
And did you?
Yes, sir.
Did you review any other statements at that time?
The interview I had with you. I watched the interview that I had with you.
That would be a videotaped deposition?
Yes, sir.
Did you have a chance, or did you review any other material in anticipation of coming to court?
No, sir.
Did you review the transcript or listen to the recordings made by Mr. Crum?
No, sir.
So let's talk a little bit about the interview on April 2nd, 2012. But I know that you talked about, in this case already, and that you talked about in that interview, the idea that the phone kept hanging up that day.
Yes, sir.
So in other words, you and Trayvon Martin would be talking, and for no apparent reason, the call would be lost.
Yes, sir.
Not because you hung up, correct?
No, sir.
Or because that you know
Bad
of.
signal.
Pardon me?
Bad signal.
So you were plagued with a bad signal all day.
Yes, sir.
And you really never knew when the phone was going to disconnect.
No, sir.
And usually what would happen is that when the phone disconnected, one or the other of you would call each other back.
Yes, sir.
So throughout the course of the day, you wound up actually speaking with each other several hours.
Yes, sir.
What you remember about this case, though, and the phone disconnecting, was that there were points in time within the conversation after George Zimmerman saw Trayvon Martin and began watching him, that the phone hung up and that you dialed Mr. Martin back or that he dialed you back.
Yes, sir.
And then there were points in time where you would remember what was happening after the call was reconnected.
Yes, sir.
It's your recollection that while at the mailbox, that's when the phone hung up at least once?
Yes, sir.
And before that, after Mr. Zimmerman was keeping his eye on Trayvon Martin, do you remember the phone hanging up and having to reconnect?
Yes, sir. As he began walking back home to try to lose the George.
First, before you get to that, we were using this point where Trayvon Martin says to you that Mr. Zimmerman is watching him. So from that point, you've said the phone did cut off a couple of times after that. But think this first. Before that point, do you remember talking to Trayvon Martin after he entered the complex and having the phone disconnect?
Yes, sir.
Where was he and when in the conversation did that take place?
The Mela area. The Mela area.
The only time you remember the phone disconnecting prior to learning from Mr. Martin that George Zimmerman was keeping his eye on him was, well, what you believe to be when Mr. Martin was at the mail area.
Yes, sir.
And after that, so after Mr. Martin left the mail area, as best as you know, and began walking towards where Trayvon was staying,
Yes, sir.
did the phone cut off again?
Yes, sir.
And then did you call him back?
Yes, sir.
And then after you called him back, that was in fact the last call of the evening between you and Mr. Martin.
Yes, sir.
That's the call that cut off.
Yes, sir.
The call that you lost or that was disconnected before the last call was when Mr. Martin was walking toward where he was staying.
Yes, sir.
And he had told you at that point that the man was in the car,
Yes, sir.
the man was on the phone,
Yes, sir.
and that he had decided to go ahead and go on home.
Yes, sir.
And you told him to do that, right?
Yes, sir.
In fact, you told him to run.
Yes, sir.
And as far as you know, he did.
Yes, sir.
And at the point that he ran, Mr. Zimmerman was still in the car.
I don't know about that, sir. Because he told me the man started following him, sir.
Well, let's break it down step by step. At the point that you told Trayvon Martin to run, your understanding from piecing it all together was that Trayvon Martin was headed towards the back of where his father was staying.
He's going to
run from the back,
Yeah.
which means to go in the back of the house as opposed to the front.
Yes, to trying to lose the man who was following him.
Gotcha. So at that point, when he was walking and decided to go on home,
Yes,
that
sir.
Mr. Zimmerman was still in the car.
Still following him, sir.
In the car.
Yes, sir.
And that Mr. Zimmerman was on the phone.
I didn't know about the phone, sir.
I thought you said that Trayvon Martin
That's
told
when he
you
was
this
watching
guy's...
him. That's when he was watching him. Trayvon told me the man was just on the phone watching him.
So Trayvon Martin had told you that when he noticed the man watching him, that the man was in a car and that the man was on the phone.
And just watching him, yes, sir.
Exactly.
Yes, sir.
And that he started walking in the direction of his home
Yes, sir.
and that the man followed him.
Yes, sir.
And at
Kept
that...
following.
Yes, in the car.
Yes, sir.
And that you had a conversation with Mr. Martin where you told him, well, just run on home.
Yes, sir.
And as far as you know, he did, correct?
No, sir. He had me. I told him run home, and then he said no is no. And then a second later, he come and tell me he gonna make a run from the back area where his fiance live.
Let's break that down just a little bit. So at the point that he says, the man's following me.
Yes, he was trying to lose the man.
Let's break it down this way. Mr. Martin leaves what you think is the mail area and walks in the direction of where he stayed.
Sir.
Yes?
Yes, sir.
And at that point, Mr. Zimmerman was still in his vehicle.
Yes, sir.
And Mr. Martin continued to walk.
Yes, sir.
And he observed and told you that the man's following him in the car.
Yes, sir.
And then you said, well, run.
Yes, sir.
And he did run.
From the back area to try.
Well, he was on the street or on the sidewalk in front of Mr. Zimmerman's car at the point that he decided to run.
Yes, sir.
And he ran. Correct.
Yes, sir. From the back area to try to lose him.
You don't know whether he ran in a direction where you could only travel by foot or whether you could drive.
No, sir. I don't live in that area.
Agreed. No. What you knew at that point, though, was that Mr. Zimmerman was still in his vehicle, probably still on the phone, because Trayvon Martin never said he wasn't. And
The witnesses speculate as to what Mr. Zimmerman was doing or not regarding the phone.
Sustain, rephrase your question, please.
Mr. Martin never said he wasn't on the phone.
The only time that Trayvon told me the man was on the phone when he was at the Mellon area. That's the only time. I never knew about he was still on the phone. I never knew about that. He never told me about that.
Right, so...
He just told me the man started following him.
And that he was on the phone, and he never told you that he wasn't on the phone.
No.
But he was still in the car.
Yeah.
And,
Yes, sir.
and then that you said, well, run, and he ran, correct?
Yeah, from the back area to
That's
try.
what's confusing me. When you say ran from the back, are you saying that at the point that he decided to run,
Yes.
that he decided to run from where he was to the back of where he was staying?
Yes.
And you don't know what direction he took to head that way?
No, sir.
Because you don't know where he was at the point that he decided to run.
No, sir.
But you do know that he ran,
Yes, sir.
and you could tell because you could hear the wind.
Yes, sir.
And then the phone cut off.
Yes, sir. I think, yes. Yes, sir.
So at that point, you knew that he was running.
Yes, sir, when I called back. When I called back.
Right, well, let me take it a little slower. So at the point that he ran, you knew he was running.
Yes, sir.
You didn't know if he was running around on the street or sidewalk where Mr. Zimmerman could continue to follow him in the vehicle, or whether he ran through a cut-through or something where no vehicles.
Judge, argumentative as to what Mr. Zimmerman was doing, and she has no knowledge of Mr. Trayvon Martin's telling.
Well, it would be speculation if you have to ask her what she knows, what she thinks somebody else may have been doing.
Yes, of course. What I'm focusing on was at the point that Trayvon Martin ran. You have that point pretty clear in your mind, correct?
Yes, sir.
You don't know whether he ran around on the street that he'd been walking on,
No,
or whether
sir.
he ran through a part of the community where you can't drive.
No, sir, I had told you. When he ran, the phone lost contact. shut off, so I had called back again. And
So at the point that he ran, the phone cut off.
yes, sir.
And then you called back.
Yes, sir.
And how long was it in between you losing the connection and you calling back?
I don't know, sir.
Well, do you think the phone was shut off by somebody? You didn't hang up, right?
No, sir.
And you have no reason to think that Trayvon Martin hung up.
No, sir.
So it seemed to you like what had been happening all day, that for no apparent reason, maybe bad signal, the call was lost.
Yes, sir.
So you talked with him then again. Was that a minute, 2 minutes, 5 seconds? Do you have any sense of after he ran when it was that you talked with Trayvon Martin again?
I don't understand what's your question.
If I might have a moment. Let me show you defendant's 16. It's that call chart that we talked about yesterday.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead and take a minute and look at it. Yesterday, you said that as far as you knew, those were accurate times of the calls that you and Trayvon Martin had on February 26th, correct?
Yes, sir.
Because it was represented to you that those times were taken from the actual phone company records.
Yes, sir.
So you don't have any argument with that.
No, sir.
Well, take a look at the second to last call.
Yes, sir.
It began at 6:54:16 p.m. and disconnected at 7:11:47. You see that?
Yes, sir.
The next call picked up at 7:12:06. You see that?
Yes, sir.
And disconnected at 7:15:43. Correct?
Yes, sir.
So let's work backwards. Let's assume that at 7:15:43, the phone cut off when you were describing the interaction between Mr. Martin and Mr. Zimmerman.
Yes,
Okay?
sir.
So that call had started at 7:12:06, which was a little over 3 minutes, correct?
Yes, sir.
And there weren't any interruptions in that phone call.
No, sir.
And frankly, you don't know at 7:15:43 when the phone cut off whether it cut off for any reason other than it was just one more lost call.
No, sir.
So look at the other call, though, the one before it, where it says it disconnected at a 7:11:47. Do you see that?
Yes, sir.
And that the next call started at 7:12:06.
Yes, sir.
If you do the math and figure out how long it was between 7:11:47 and 7:12:06, to me, that is...
Can you please keep your, if you need to take a copy of that.
Of course, I'll step back. That's about 19 seconds, correct?
Yes, sir.
So, does that seem to you to be about right? That when Trayvon Martin ran towards the back of his father's house while George Zimmerman was in the car, that about 20 seconds elapsed before your call reconnected?
Yes, sir.
So the only time from before 7 o'clock, before any part of this case actually started,
Yes, sir.
you were on the phone with Mr. Martin for all of that time except about 20 seconds.
Yes, sir.
And it was the 20 seconds we're talking about where Mr. Martin had decided to run, and then you reconnected with him.
Yes, sir.
this be a good time for a short recess?
Do we need a brief recess? Yes. Okay, we're going to take a 15-minute recess. If you'll just remain seated, Ms. Gentile. Ladies and gentlemen, put your notepads face down on the chair and follow Deputy Corporal Demps back to the jury room. Ms. Gentile, we're going to take you may be seated. We're going to take a 15-minute recess. You're going to be able to leave the stand, but I'll remind you not to discuss your testimony with anybody while we're on recess. Corporal Lapp, if you'll please help Ms. Gentile out. Is there anything we need to take up before we take a 15-minute recess? Okay, thank you. Court will be in recess for 15 minutes.